Hello everyone, it's Pixel again, and happy Halloween! This review is going to be the big send-off for the month of Macabre. It is Something Sweet to Bite. Now, you probably all recall that I did a review on Home Sweet Home, A Candymare's Tale, and I mentioned that I would, at least I think I did, so I figured why not do Something Sweet to Bite. And I do plan on doing the sequels as well, but yeah, like I said, happy Halloween. And yeah. So, yeah, this is, and disclaimer, I do not own this. This story belongs to the rightful owner, so please go and support them and be nice. And warning, this story is very gory, so viewer discretion is advised. Now for the summary. Nightmare Night is one of the most popular holidays in Equestria. This was not always the case, however. This is the story of what happens when a culture forgets its past and ignores the true meaning of its traditions. This is the origins of a true nightmare, and what it means when it's unwillingly returned to the waking world by three young friends. But most of all, this is a story about candy. So this story is basically kind of a bit of is like part of the origin story for the Candymare, who is the main antagonist of, well, that and also kind of the main character of the Something Sweet to Bite series. But yeah. And basically, this story starts off with Applejack making caramel apples for Nightmare Night, but she notices something a bit odd. As in, she hasn't seen her little sister Apple Bloom around, and of course, she notices that some of the caramel apples have been eaten, and Applejack thinks that it was Apple Bloom and her friends, and they're just playing a trick on her. But that's not the case, as Apple Bloom is then found in a cauldron with dead inside scalding hot caramel. Applejack tries to revive her sister after getting her out, burning her hooves in the process, but things get messy really quick as the Candymare appears now. And basically she kinda ends up turning Applejack into a caramel apple. And yeah, now this, one thing to keep in mind about this story is that it kind of jumps around. So and also I have seen scribblers and take on it, and please go watch it, and because frankly I think she said it better than I ever could. So yeah, please go check it out and support her and be nice. But yeah, like I said, this story is one that you really have to pay attention, because in the next chapter is actually before Apple Bloom was killed, because Apple Bloom is alive and well in the next chapter. Bless me, I am so sorry. But yeah, Apple Bloom is alive and well in the next chapter, and basically, because there's actually a reason for this, because at one point when Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo, the Candymare Crusaders have a bet going on with Diamond and Tiara, saying, and I love, like, some little explanations as to why Diamond, Tiara, and Silver Spoon were not part of the group during last Nightmare Night. And yeah. So they make a bet, and whoever gets the most candy, they get the loser's candy as well. By the end, without giving it to the statue of Nightmare Moon. But that sadly proves to be their undoing later, since Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo find a book of candy recipes where now the candy recipes, and I probably should have talked about this first, but the candy recipes is actually from the one responsible for creating the Candymare. And what that means is, and by the way, this story will have spoilers. This review will have spoilers, so please keep in mind. So now, like I said, the history of the Candymare. The Candymare was actually once a little filly who was the daughter of two earth pony farmers, and they basically were having some hard times, and the little pony's father was granted to visit Canterlot with his daughter to visit a sweet shop run by a unicorn named Lemon Drop. And basically here is where we get some history of what happened, like, after the Wendigos, and as to where it was, like, basically before the pony tribes could really all come together as a union. And basically he takes his daughter to the sweet shop, and Lemon Drop is revealed to have, it's actually revealed there that young earth ponies have gone missing in the city, and the reason why no one is bothering to look for them is because they're likely not to be missed. And he does the same thing that to the little filly and her father. And Lemon Drop ends up killing the earth pony, the children's parents, after he takes them away. And basically that's what he does with the little filly who later becomes the Candymare. He basically force feeds her candy all the time. And yeah, like I said, this guy is sick, like really, really sick, and not in a good way, because he's basically force-feeding her candy without giving her water or any kind of other food that she'll need to survive. And, well, he does give her something else, but it's basically meat. And the meat actually came from an unpleasant source. It came from her father. Yeah, like I said, the story is very gory and very disturbing. And it's actually revealed, like, during all of this, and the previous subjects at one point that he states later died due to not being able to survive on the candy alone, and basically if they die, and if they don't, they just he just keeps testing them until they die, I guess. But this little filly could not. She just keeps on living and living. And yeah, like, and the Candymare is actually kind of what inspired me to make a kind of like a villain OC of my own that was actually inspired and kind of based off of her. And I'll talk about him in another video. But back to the review. So yeah, he basically just keeps, when it looks like the little filly died like the rest of the subjects that he had before, she instead wakes up and starts laughing and constantly wants more candy. So he basically just keeps feeding her, and it's the only thing that can sustain her hunger. And she basically ends up turning into a full-grown pony made out of candy with a taste for meat. And Home Sweet Home is actually kind of what happened after she killed Lemon Drop and escaped, and after she went on a killing spree in Canterlot. And yeah, and basically, and the only way the Candymare could have been defeated is with Luna, because Luna actually purified her with the light of the moon and banished her away in the darkness. And throughout time, the Candymare and Nightmare Moon have kind of became intertwined. Basically, parents would leave bags of candy out on their doorsteps in order to get the Candymare to leave them alone and spare their children, but it seemed that didn't always work for them, and she ended up killing them anyways. And like I said, Home Sweet Home is basically what happened afterwards. And so yeah, and basically the Candymare actually comes back in present time because after that shenanigan that Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle tried to pull, they basically get grounded from trick-or-treating, and and Twilight and Pinkie actually go to the Nightmare Moon statue, where they leave some candy there in order to protect Ponyville from the Candymare. But it doesn't. But basically, the Candymare is then awakened because in order for this to work, you really need to believe in the old traditions of Nightmare Night. You really need to, and basically, so yeah, the Candymare comes back, and presumably her first target when she comes back is she made it to Sweet Apple Acres, which is where the story began, where she killed Apple Bloom and Applejack too. And Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo actually go to tell her that they can't go this year, but the Candymare got to the Apple Sisters first, and she's basically using them as like some kind of weird, grotesque, and gory puppets that are covered head to toe in caramel. Excuse me, sorry. So Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo make a run for it, and they tell Twilight about it along with Pinkie Pie, and they try to warn everyone in Ponyville, but at first they just think that this is just a joke. But it turns out to be the real deal when the Candymare appears and starts slaughtering everyone that she manages to. And like I said, one of the most disturbing things that she does is she rips the skin off of Pipsqueak's hide and starts eating the meat off of his bones, which is, gross. Just, mm-mm. But Twilight manages to get the Candymare's attention before she can wreak more carnage on the citizens of Ponyville, and basically Twilight manages to get the upper hand, or hoof in this case. And she, along with the other unicorns of Ponyville, start pulling the Candymare apart after Twilight sets up a spell that manages to physically injure her. But as they're pulling the Candymare apart, she starts to look like more and more like a little filly, which Twilight takes notice of. And of course, she explains of what happened about, she's like, how this is the second time a unicorn has tried to kill her. And she basically, what I got is that she probably thinks that Twilight reminds her of Lemon Drop, with maybe how powerful Twilight is, or that she has like the same, I don't know, scent as him. I don't know, but she does say that he did smell like her. I don't know how, and anywho, just, I don't know, that was just kind of weird to me. Well, actually very weird. Sorry, I'm rambling. But yeah, she then tries to finish off Twilight by having, like, her skull, like, in these, like, weird tendrils of magic, like, coming out from the back of her skull, and just when it seems like it's going to be the end for Twilight, Pinkie Pie actually rushes in and takes the skull and breaks it. And of course, but before they can actually relish the victory yet, because if they did, this victory would sadly be premature. Pinkie tells Twilight to look, and the Candymare is actually trying to piece herself back together. And Pinkie Pie figures that the only way to truly defeat the Candymare is by eating the pieces of candy that are trying to form back into her. So, but Twilight is obviously disgusted when Pinkie Pie starts chomping away at the candy, since it has bits of their friends still stuck to them. But it does seem to work, since the pieces that are trying to form limbs again are slowing down, and basically Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo follow suit, and so does the rest of Ponyville, and Twilight does, and the scene closes with nothing but the sounds of sobbing and eating. And the story ends with, there is one part I'll get back to, but that kind of ties into the ending, because the ending, after all of that happened, Pinkie, Twilight, and Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo head back to the Golden Elks Library, where Spike is still going out trick-or-treating, because frankly, some ponies that weren't there probably didn't know what was going on. Excuse me. So they get themselves cleaned up, because they were like all soaked in blood from the carnage that the Candymare reaped, and after getting cleaned up and going inside, Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle go upstairs to go to sleep. And Twilight is very, very, very shooken about what everything happened and what she and the other ponies in Ponyville had to do. And she wonders if this is even worth learning a lesson about, because since Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo are still so young and they had to do that, she basically wants to just tell them that was all just a bad dream. Like, that didn't happen, and you guys didn't do that, but Twilight doesn't know, kind of, at this point, sadly feels like she's falling apart. And Pinkie Pie then comforts her and tells Twilight that she was the brave one, since Twilight states at one point that she doesn't know how Pinkie can be so brave, and Pinkie says that she's the brave one because she actually stood up to the Candymare, and Pinkie Pie claims that all she did was just eat some pieces of candy. So after Twilight calms down a bit, even though she really, and frankly I don't blame her about not wanting to be alone, Pinkie Pie asks if Twilight can walk her home. And Twilight agrees, but Spike stumbles into the pair of them, and he's a mess. Half of his costume and half of his face have been ripped off, and he's a bleeding mess. And he then says that there's something wrong with Rarity, and they see what appears to be a candy pony version of Rarity slurping down the dragon skin that came from Spike. And basically Rarity is now made out of marshmallow, since her body begins to burn like when you roast marshmallows over a fire. And Twilight asks what she's doing, and Pinkie Pie then all of a sudden feels very sick. She basically starts throwing up, saying it hurts, and she actually ends up having, and then she just pops like a balloon, getting viscera and various blood all over the place, and the lights end up going out at Twilight's place. And Twilight doesn't understand, why is this happening? Like, they thought they defeated the Candymare. And Twilight then figures out that she might be coming back, and something where, and basically the spot where Pinkie Pie was once standing, something new is beginning to rise in her place. And it's a candy pony version of Pinkie Pie. And she and Rarity then begin to sing the Nightmare Night song as jack-o'-lanterns flare up. And Twilight, despite being freaked out, she goes up to save Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo, but sadly she's too late, and sees that they too have become like this kind of like fusion of like these gelatinous gumdrop-dyed candy monsters. Like, they have gumdrops for eyes, and Twilight begins to feel her skin stretch and her bones crack, and it's described as almost as if little mouths are eating her from the inside out, and she starts to bleed out of every opening. And Twilight manages to make it to the bathroom, but sadly it's too late for her. She ends up, Pinkie and Rarity then end up eating Twilight as a new jack-o'-lantern flares to life. And Twilight recognizes it as it having her own pained expression, almost as if it's her life force. But then, and much like Rarity, Sweetie Belle, and Scootaloo and Pinkie, Twilight ends up becoming a candy zombie as well. And this story ends with the Candymare making it to Canterlot with an army of candy ponies as she stares down Princess Luna, the only pony that was ever ever managed to slow her down. And then the story ends with the Candymare saying trick or treat. Whoo-wee. Like I said, this fanfic is one of my favorites, because the Candymare is a really interesting character. I mean, yeah, she's a monster, but she was a little girl first. Like, she was a little filly who had a lot of love to give, and she basically had that all taken away from her in one fell swoop due to a greedy unicorn. And the thing about the Candymare that's interesting, at one point she says that when she's talking to Twilight, she said that she wanted to become them. She wanted to be like the unicorns, and she basically thinks she is now. Because before she was the Candymare, and when she was still, and by the way, spoilers, again, because her name is Pumpkin Patch, back when she was Pumpkin Patch, she loved the unicorns. She thought that they could do anything, like, because the unicorns were otherworldly. In this time, it was unicorn magic to young Pegasi and Earth Pony fillies and colts was probably seen as something rather unworldly, like, because just the joy in her going with her father to see a unicorn at the big city, and yeah. And so yeah, we don't get that much about Pumpkin Patch's mother, Strawberry Patch, or her father, or her dad, Cabbage Patch, because like I said, in Home Sweet Home, and I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record, but in Home Sweet Home we get more history about her family, presumably more about her mother than her father, since because granted, I think the reason, another hint as to why Pumpkin Patch became the Candymare is because Lemon Drops actually fed her bits of candy that were laced with alchemy in them, and that caused some kind of reaction in her body, which effectively made her immortal. And yeah, but here I think it's more like a curse of some kind. And there is actually another pony in this fanfic besides Twilight, Pinkie Pie, and Rarity, as well as Applejack and the Cutie Mark Crusaders. There's actually a scene where the Candymare ends up killing and eating Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon, and she actually leaves some candy on Rarity's doorstep, and Rarity presumably eats it and becomes what we see in the final chapter. Now, there is actually a scene with a part where that involves Fluttershy. Now, Fluttershy is going to be really important in the sequel, along with Rainbow Dash, because Rainbow Dash actually doesn't appear at all, since it's revealed that she was away when this all happened. And basically what happened at Fluttershy's cottage is that Fluttershy, of course, was being, like, she was not happy that it was Nightmare Night, because, frankly, like, in the episode, it scares her, and she doesn't want, but this time as at one point when someone keeps knocking at her door, she gets frustrated and goes to see what's happening. But as she opens the door, she sees a lot of carved pumpkins in her front yard. Some of them are even in the stream and their lights haven't gone out yet, and they're all carved with pained expressions. And in case anyone's confused about the whole pumpkin jack-o'-lantern thing whenever the candy ponies come, it's actually supposed to be like a sign that, like for instance, when Twilight is being eaten by Pinkie Pie and Rarity, and when Rarity steps into the library and the lights go out, jack-o'-lanterns flare up whenever a candy pony zombie is being reborn. So yeah, that's kind of what the pumpkins or jack-o'-lanterns in this case represent. Like, they're in a sense being reborn, since eating pieces of the Candymare turns you into her follower and basically turns you into a candy ghoul like her. So Fluttershy actually goes back into her cottage, and she spots the candy ponies chewing and eating on Angel Bunny, and of course they turn, and it seems like they're going to get Fluttershy next, but Fluttershy manages to bite off one of their noses and basically makes a run for it, or which by that she flies away, as her house is then set on fire. But as Fluttershy is trying to find help, she sees the aftermath of what happened after they ate the pieces of the Candymare. And she goes to Twilight's library, and she knocks on the door, but no one answers, and because at one point during when Twilight is going upstairs to get Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo, she hears knocking at the door and wants to tell them, to whoever is knocking at her door, to run away. But she can't, and that's probably what the knocking was. It was Fluttershy. But then Fluttershy feels like she's going to be sick after no one answers her. So, yeah. That's basically, we don't fully see what happens to Fluttershy, or that she just remembered what she did and she regretted and threw it out, but that actually turns out it's there was a lot more consequence than anyone could have realized. So yeah, like, I love the, like, additions to the jack-o'-lanterns, like them appearing whenever a candy zombie is being reborn from the pony that's been affected with the candy curse, because later on in the series we find out that this is actually some kind of curse that's called the Candy Curse. But yeah. And the Candymare, like I said, she's a very, very intimidating character. But at the same time, like, there's still almost like a childlikeness to her. The fact that when she's killing Diamond, Tiara, and Silver Spoon, she basically dances around in rains of viscera, which, ew, is gross. But she is, in a sense, still some kind of child, or at least childlike. Or basically, she's kind of childish in some cases. Like, she basically, like a child, she sometimes plays with her food. And since, well, she's made of candy now, she no longer has a taste for candy. She has a taste for meat. So, and the voice acting for her is very, very good. Like, it's very haunting. Like, and very, it kind of fits her design. And And you're probably wondering, because like I said in Home Sweet Home, this actually kind of gives that story actually gave another layer to the Candymare as to why she's eating ponies in general and not just unicorns. Because to her, they all taste the same. And the ending where the Candymare basically has an army of candy pony zombies at her disposal, and is very unnerving and really sets up but it actually does sets up rather well what's going to happen in the sequel. And this, and of course the two main characters in the sequel are two Pegasi, which are Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash, as well as Zecora, Trixie, and Big Macintosh, because granted they all kind of just... Rainbow I could get cut, but Big Mac, I think he kind of just disappeared he was mentioned in the first chapter by Applejack, but that's kind of all we got of him, so... But yeah, I'm excited and looking forward to reviewing the sequel, as well as the rest of the series, because the Candymare from here on out gets more and more violent, to say the least. Well, and rather powerful. And yeah, and the Candymare's resentment towards ponies was actually influenced by her mother, since she grew up in the time, like, and like it says, the pony tribes did not come together like in one night. It basically had to take some time before they could all get along in unity. Like, it didn't happen overnight. They still had to make progress still. But yeah, and also, I love, like, the parallels, like, how it tells, like, the tradition of also, like, the holiday Halloween, and how the tradition is that people would dress up in costumes to hide from evil spirits, and parents in Equestria would dress up their kids in order to hide them from the Candymare. So, yeah. But yeah, like I said, Home Sweet Home gives us a bit more depth to the Candymare as to why she's like this, and basically the fact that her mother was, and once again, spoilers, her mother was an illegitimate child, and her mother, like, basically hated the other pony tribes because to her, that's how it's always have been, and that ended up rubbing off on, because Pumpkin Patch is, well, her mother's daughter, so it basically, in a sense, ended up poisoning her, and basically, in a sense, well, in a way, helped her become more and more of the Candymare and made her lose the part of her that was Pumpkin Patch. So, yeah, and also, one of the freakiest scenes to me would have to be the ending where Twilight and Pinkie and Rarity are all in this mess, and how they all end up turning it into candy zombies, like with Twilight feeling her skin being stretched, her bones popping, blood coming out of every opening, like she's being eaten from the inside out, and when Pinkie and Rarity start to eat her. So, just, ew. And also this story also kind of reminded me of Because frankly, there were some aspects that did, at least to me, did felt like it was a bad dream for Twilight and the others. It also, and that reminded me of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, which I probably might do one day, but yeah, like I said. So, yeah, that was something sweet to bite. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I hope you all had a happy Halloween. And also, another creepy part of the story is when the Candymare is using Apple Bloom and Applejack as puppets. And also the pony, and also at the Nightmare Night party where the Candymare is just using like her licorice hair, just basically slaughtering all of them. But yeah, so I hope everyone enjoyed, and happy Halloween to all of you, and thank you all for watching, and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Happy Halloween! Bye!